Last week we spoke about the fact that in the previous prakim, the previous chapters, we discussed the Nefesh Alikis and the Nefesh Bahamis. We discussed the anatomy of each one of them. And they're corresponding one to another. Each one is a complete profile, one opposite the other. And last week we said, although that they are both complete profiles, they seem to be almost mirror images of each other, but their home base is different. The home base of the Nefesh Alikis is in the mind, and the home base of the Nefesh Bahamis is in the heart, which will be that'll be important information to keep in mind a little later on. Achin Eksiv. The last three words on page 26. Bottom line. However, he Eksiv, the pasuk says, Yamatz. This is a pasuk that's referring to Yaakov and Esav when Rivka was pregnant with them. So the pasuk tells us that she had a difficult pregnancy. The children were making trouble inside. They were fighting. They're chasing each other. So Rivka goes to a Navi to find out what's going on, and she finds out that there are two nations within her womb, Yaakov and Esav, which is Bnei Yisrael and Edom. So Shnei Goyim B'Vitnech, there are two nations in your womb. Shnei L'umim Mi'ayich Yiparedu, these two nations, they will separate from the womb. U'La'oim Mel'oim Yamas, which means that they're constantly going to be struggling one with another. One nation will be overpowering the other nation. And from this, Chazal tell us that the Yidden and Edom are never on an even keel. In the words of Chazal, Kishazek comes Zan Neufel. Kishazek comes Zan Neufel. When one arises, the other one falls. And when the other arises, then the other one falls. I mean, Yaakov and Esav represent the Nefesh Alikis and the Nefesh Bahamis respectively. So the Oim Yamatz means that until now we discussed the Nefesh Bahamis and the Nefesh Alikis in individual terms, but now we have to realize that they are constantly involved in a struggle, one with another. And when one is strong, the other is weak, and when the other is weak, the other is strong. It's impossible for both of them to be strong and to be victorious at the same time. And it's also impossible for neither of them to be operational. At every single moment, one of them is in operation. And based on what we said earlier, we can understand that. I mean, based on what we've been learning until now. The Nefesh Alikis represents selflessness, bittul to Hashem, subjugation to Hashem. The Nefesh Bahamis represents self-centeredness. At any moment during the day, whatever a person is engaged in is for one of those two purposes. It's either the Nefesh Alikis or the Nefesh Bahamis. Either what you're doing is for Hashem or it's for yourself. Ki aguf nikra ir ktana. The body, in Kohela, Shloima HaMalach refers to the body as a ir ktana, as a small city. And the Gemara in the Nedarim explains that this is a reference to the human being, to the body. Just like you can have two kings that are both battling over one city, Shekal Echad, each one, Reitza wants Lekavsha to conquer it, and to be its king. The Hainu, what does it mean to be its king? That the people in the city should behave according to his will, and they should be listening to all his decrees, whatever he decrees upon them. Kach, the same thing, Shteya Nefashis, the same thing. There's also the two souls that we've been learning about in the last few prakim, Ha'alikis v'Achiyunas, the godly soul, and the Nefesh Bahamis, which provides physical life, HaBahamis, Shema HaKlipa, Nolchame Zu Imzu Ala Guf V'Chol Eivarav. They're constantly battling over the body and over all its limbs and all its parts. When we started Tanya, we spoke, and I believe we repeated this on several occasions, The Nefesh Elokis and Nefesh Bahamis is different than the Yetzer Tov and the Yetzer Hara. The Yetzer Tov and the Yetzer Hara means there's me, and within me I have different desires. Some of them are good, and some of them are bad, some of them are harmful. And that is the paradigm that was embraced until the times of the Arizal. One person with different desires and different inclinations. If that is the case, then what is the battle? What is the battle between the Yetzer Tov and the Yetzer Hara? I have a desire for this, I have a desire for that. What will I actually do? The battle then becomes over how will I express myself? What will, or to put it differently, in machshava dibur maisa. Will I think along the lines of the Yetzer Tov or the Yetzer Hara? Will I speak in tune with the desires of the Yetzer Tov or the Yetzer Hara? Will I behave in accordance with the will of the Yetzer Tov or the Yetzer Hara? So the battle is only in the area of machshava dibur maisa. But now that we understand the idea of a nefesh elokis, nefesh bahamis, we understand that the battle is much deeper than that. It's not only about how I'm going to behave, or speak, or think. The nefesh elokis is an entire profile. It is seichel, it is midos, and machshava dibur maisa. The nefesh bahamis is an entire profile. Seichel, midos, machshava dibur maisa. The problem is, you have two profiles and one body. It's almost like if you have a machine and it has a plug and there are two sockets. Where are you going to plug it into? We're the body. Where are we going to be plugged into? The nefesh elokis or the nefesh bahamis? It can't be both. At any given moment, I'm plugged into one or the other. The mind is at this moment either being a receptacle, a keli for the moichin, the intellect of the nefesh elokis, or of the nefesh bahamis. The heart is either right now expressing the feelings of the nefesh elokis or the nefesh bahamis. And obviously, machshava dibur maisa is right now either in accordance with the nefesh elokis or the nefesh bahamis. So the battle is much deeper than the battle between the Yetzer Tov and the Yetzer Hara. It's a complete battle from top to bottom, because the nefesh elokis has a complete, as I said, it's a complete persona, and it wishes to express itself completely. It wishes that my mind only has the seichel of the nefesh elokis. In other words, thinking about Hashem and about Torah and about mitzvahs. My heart should only be filled with midos, with emotions which are nefesh elokis midos, love of Hashem, avos Yisrael, and also that every part of my body, all the limbs, should be doing what the nefesh elokis wants. The nefesh bahamis wants the exact opposite. So we have over here the analogy of Shlomo HaMelech about a city is a very very accurate analogy. You have a city, and you have two kings, and each one is trying to take complete control over the city. And that's exactly what's happening in the human body. You have a person, and you have the physical body, and you have all the spiritual, psychological components that we have, the mind, the heart, etc. And both the nefesh elokis and the nefesh bahamis, each one, their goal is to take complete control over everything in the city, everything in the body. And with that, we're going to, let's continue. And what we're going to have over here, we're holding 6 lines from the top where it says Shohel Likis. And it's going to start talking about the desire of the godly soul. And that's going to take us for the entire chapter until the last 2 lines. The last 2 lines of the chapter are going to tell us what the nefesh bahamis wants. So we get...
Who makes the decision here? You have 2 opposing nefashos. How do you describe the entity who makes the decision?
That's a very good question. Very good question. We'll talk about that in the next period. Very good.
It does entertain.
Because right now we're not talking about the decision. Right now we're still focused on what is the desire of the nefesh elokis, what is the desire of the nefesh bahamis. What is actually going to happen? That's next period. The first words of the next period is Vihine kisha'adam magbir nafshi elokis. When the person causes that the nefesh elokis should overpower the nefesh bahamis, which raises the question right away: who is the adam? Who is this person? Who is the negotiator? So we're going to talk about that in next period. Yeah. So Shohalikis, the godly soul, Chefza Uretzaina, its desire is Shetehi Levada HaMeshallah Salav. It wants to be in full control. But it alone should control. HaMeshallah Salav should be in control, rule the person, Umanhigasei, and direct the person. V'chol ha'ivarim yiyusarim l'mashmata, and that all the limbs should do as it wants. U'b'teilim etzla legamri, should be completely bottled to the nefesh elikis. U'merkava eileha, like a chariot to it. V'yiyu levush le'eser b'chanesa, and it should be, all the body, the entire body should be like a garment for its 10 components. V'gimel levusheha, and the 3 garments Haniskarim li'il, which were mentioned earlier. So just a little taste over here of how the words of the Alter Rebbe are taken and are analyzed and they're put under a microscope. The Alter Rebbe mentions here several things, and each one is a deeper idea. The first thing it says that it wants to be in control, and what does that mean? That all that all the limbs should do as it wants it to do. So that's level number 1. Level number 2 is ubeteilim eileha legamri. It wants complete bittul. It wants that all the limbs should be completely bottle. And what's the difference between this? Is that just going back to the analogy which we mentioned, is that you can have a king that conquers the city and everyone is listening to the king, but the reason why they're listening to the king is because they feel threatened, not because they want to, but they feel compelled to do so. So level number 1 in the bittul, that a person can be, when it comes to Kedusha, that why am I doing that which Hashem wants? Why am I doing that which my neshama wants? I'm compelled to, for whatever reason. But that's not my desire. My desire really is to do otherwise. My desire really is to be involved in the pleasures of this world and to do Avedas. But for whatever reason, and there can be many, many reasons, whether because very shallow reasons, because I'm looking forward to the reward and afraid of punishment. And then there are deeper reasons. My mind understands that this is more important, but either way, I compel myself to behave in a way which is different than what I really want to do. That would be the first level, sarim l'mashmata. Sarim l'mashmata means, practically speaking, that the nefesh elikis wants that the body should do that which the nefesh elikis wants it to do. The next level is ubeteilim eileha, which ubeteilim etzla legamri, completely bottle. And this is that when not only that the body should be in accordance with what the neshama wants, but it should want to do what the neshama wants also. It should be bottle. Bottle means that it's not only doing it because it has to do, but bottle is something which is more pneumistic, which is more internal. That it's bottle the nefesh elikis, whatever it wants, that is what I want also. Like you have in Pirkei Avos, bottle ritzoincha mipnei ritzoinoi, that which means that I don't have a ratzon which is anywhat different, that I make that my ratzon should be in accordance with the ratzon of the nefesh elikis. Level number 3 over here is merkava eileha. What is the bittul of a merkava? The bittul of a chariot. So if you have a horse and chariot, where do they go? They go where the wagon driver takes them. So it's not pshat that they're forced to do that, and they have a different desire. The wagon has no desire of its own. It has no opinion. It's not even that the wagon willingly does that which the wagon follows the wagon driver. It has no will whatsoever. It's automatic that when the wagon driver leads it in one direction, it follows. So that's an even higher level of bittul. And that's another goal of the nefesh elikis, is that the body should be completely subservient to the point that it doesn't even have a desire, a will, which is in accordance with the neshama, but that it's completely bottle, like a merkava. The Chazal tell us that the Avis were the merkava. The Avis, in other words, that they followed Hashem completely to the point that they didn't even have a desire. Not even a desire to do what Hashem wants. They were completely, they followed along they followed Hashem like a wagon follows the wagon driver.
Ruth and Naomi was the same thing. Ruth told Naomi, Bashet l'chialech, Bashet tavo etoi, Bashet ishi tishni. It's the same.
That's the level of bittul, absolutely. So again, and then v'yu levush, that the entire body should be simply a garment, l'eser b'chinei seham, to the 10 components of the nefesh elokis, which is the 3 elements of seichel and the 7 elements of midas. V'gimel levusha hanal, and its 3 garments, sheyislapshu kulam be'evri aguf. That these 10 components should all come and invest themselves within the limbs of the body. The body should be full only with the faculties of the nefesh elokis. And the stranger, being the nefesh habahamis, should never find any entry whatsoever. Now, what we're learning right now, we have to realize this is very high madrega. The fact that a person should be even the lowest level, the sarim mashmate, doing constantly that we do only what the nefesh elokis wants, and machshava and dibur and maisa, that's also a very high level. And most certainly when you're talking about the higher levels, the level of bittul to the nefesh, the complete bittul, and then even the higher level of the bittul of merkava, these are all very high levels. But, yeah.
It sounds like the avos, the merkavos, that they completely wiped out their free will. Is this something desirable? Is that what we should attain to? That we should be so desiring to do the will of Hashem that we have no free will otherwise?
That's a good question, and I'm going to push you off also to next perek, because we're going to find out that this is the next perek, because we're going to be talking about tzaddikim, and we're going to find out that this is the condition not only of the avos but also of all tzaddikim. So that will be the appropriate place to have this conversation.
So if they have no Yetzer Hara, they kill the Yetzer Hara altogether, what is their purpose in this world? They will fulfill their mission.
So what is the purpose of a tzaddik? So again, I can defer that question to next perek. But the only thing I could tell you, maybe I mentioned this in the, I'm sure I did mention it, that the Alter Rebbe, when he wrote Tanya, Sefer Shel Beinim, he also wrote another Sefer called Sefer Shel Tzaddikim. And that was a Sefer for Tzaddikim. For anyone here in this room who's in the level of Tzaddik. But unfortunately, that Sefer was burnt. It wasn't, it was destroyed, sorry?
It wasn't published?
No. It was burnt at the same time when the Shpoler Zayda passed away. That's what's always been said. Now, what is the significance of that? I don't know. But that's whenever it says it's burnt, it's always in tandem with at the same time when the Shpoler Zayda passed away. So there must be some sort of connection over there.
But it's impossible to be a tzaddik without Yetzer Hara, because it said, "En tzaddik ba'aretz asher lo yechita." So it's impossible to be.
Next perek. We're not talking.
Next week.
So let's specify.
So right now we're not talking about. I want to make it clear right now. In this perek we're not talking about feasibility. We're not saying that we can all even reach these levels. In this perek we're talking about what is the desire of the nefesh elokis, and the desire of every nefesh elokis, even if it can't achieve that, due to the realities of this world and the realities of being a human being. And as we'll find out the next perek, a tzaddik is the one who can reach these incredible levels. And not everyone has the ability to be a tzaddik. Not everyone has that. But still, it's important to know, every single one of us has a neshama. And this neshama, as we learned in Perek Beis, is a chilek alakam mimal, is a godly neshama. And therefore, its desire is everything we're going to learn now. Whether or not we can actually get there or not, in order to understand the battle, we have to know what is it that the nefesh elokis is out for, and also on the opposite side, what is it that the nefesh habahamis wants. So the nefesh elokis wants nothing other than absolute control, an absolute expression, and that the nefesh habahamis shouldn't have any place whatsoever. And now he's going to go more in detail. Dahainu. This means tlatz meichin shaberoish. The 3 moichin in the head, and the Zohar, it says that we learned earlier in Perek Gimel that there are 3 intellectual faculties, Chachma, Bina, and Das. And the Zohar tells us, I don't know if we have any neurologists over here, who can maybe translate this to us in English, but it says, Tlas Chalali, that there are three hollow areas in the brain. And one is called the Moyach HaChachma, one is Moyach HaBina, one is Moyach HaDas. Each one is the home base for one of them. Today we're understanding more the idea of what is called physiology, that everything psychological and emotional has actually a physical expression. So today we can relate more to these ideas. If there's something spiritual within us, spiritual elements, they also have a physical place and a physical expression. So therefore, Tlas Moichin Sheberesh, the three parts of the brain, Yiyu Mimuloyim B'Chabad Shebenefesh Elikis. The Nefesh Elikis wants that the three parts of the brain should be filled only with the Chabad, the Chachma, Bina, and Das of the godly soul, which is what? Shehi Chachmas Hashem Ubinasai, the wisdom, understanding Hashem, and Bina and Hashem, Lisboinin B'Gdulasei Asher Ad Ein Cheker, to contemplate Hashem's greatness which has no end, Ve'ein Soif, Ulohilud Mahen, and through this meditation to give birth, Ayidei Hadas, through Das, and we discussed in Perek Gimel how the birth of Midas has to go through Das, Hayira B'Moiche, to give birth, that the intellectual element should give birth to Hayira B'Moiche, fear of Hashem in one's mind, Upachad Hashem Bilibai, and fear of Hashem in the heart. That's the way it works. Fear begins in the mind and then works its way down to the heart. The avas Hashem, and a love for Hashem, ke'eish boyara bilibai, like a burning fire in his heart, ke'rishpei shal havas, like the flames of a fire. Lias nichsava v'gam kolsa nafshe. The next thing after the fear comes the love, a fiery love, that a person, that the neshama getois, the neshama is going out b'chasheka v'chafetza, with a desire and with a yearning l'dafka boy be'ein seif baruch hu, to connect and to cleave to Hashem b'chol leiv v'nefesh u'me'od, with all one's heart and with all one's soul and with all one's might, me'umka deliba, from the depths of the heart, she'b'chol la'yamani, the right side of the heart. That's where the nefesh elikis is. She'yeh teichei ratzuf ava, the inside of the heart should be covered with love, malay, and then filled with love, vigadush, and overflowing. And let's stop over here for a second. So what do we have here so far? The Nefesh Elikis wants that its desire is that the mind should be filled with the Chachma, Bina, and Das of the Nefesh Elikis, which is the understanding of Hashem and thinking about Hashem, and using that understanding and thinking to give birth to emotions. And what are the emotions? So first he discusses fear of Hashem, and then he moves on to discussing love of Hashem, a fiery love of Hashem which completely covers and fills the right part of the heart, and then it overflows. Ad shetispashed gam l'chol lasmali. And for that, it has to, until it overflows also to the left side, lakfaya l'siter achra. And let's do a little outside, and then we'll go back inside. And let's give a little hakdama what Alter Rebbe is going to say over here now. We're going to be introduced over here to two Chassidic terms, which appear very often in Chassidus. And they are called iskafia and ishapcha. Ishapcha is the easy one, it means transformation. And iskafia means, the word iskafia comes from, it's an Aramaic word, but it's also related to the Hebrew word kofa, which means to bend. What? Or to dominate. Well, when you dominate something, that thing bends before you. So iskafia means domination, subjugation, that you're making something subservient to you. And ishapcha means transformation. That which was previously was subjugated and subservient is now has been transformed. So in Chassidic terminology, usually when we talk about iskafia and ishapcha, so iskafia means that if there's a food that is really, really talking to me, A food. I don't mean talking to me like. I have a desire for this food. A desire from the Nefesh HaBahamis. So Eskafia means I don't eat it. We're going to learn a lot about this in Perek Chav Zayin, chapter 27. Either I don't eat it, or I say I want it now, I'll eat it in 20 minutes from now. Which means my desire doesn't go away. My desire to eat it doesn't go away. My Nefesh HaBahamis is still at full strength, but I am going to show it who's the boss over here. It's not the boss, I'm the boss, and therefore I'm going to push it aside. I'm going to make it subservient. I'm going to subjugate that desire. That desire, the best word is actually, I'm going to suppress it. That's probably the best translation for Eskafia. Suppression.
It's the same thing even if you put it off and then you give in 20 minutes, half an hour later, rather than never give in?
You're asking if it's the same thing if you put it off for 20 minutes and half an hour, you never give in. Well, first of all, for 20 minutes you did Eskafia. That's number one.
Then you succumb.
And second of all, we're going to learn about this in Perek Chav Zayin. Stay tuned. Come back in like a year. Chapter 27.
When, next year?
Well, when are we going to get to chapter 27? Yeah.
I feel like this whole conversation we're about to have, the starting point from it is his boinus. All of this that the Alter Rebbe is saying starts from the action of his boinus, correct? Now,
There's a reason why it's called Chassidus Chabad.
Right. So my question is, so Breslovers, for example, they have like an eitzah that they go and they do his boidus for an hour a day. I never hear anything about like a structured, eitzah within Chassidus Chabad of like, okay, this is how often you should do his boidus, this is how you do it, and this is for how long you do it. So practically nowadays, how is his boidus done to reach, which then leads to all these other things?
Okay. You're asking practically how do we do his boinus? Is there a prescribed regimen? We actually spoke about this at length. This is over here, it's mentioned in passing. We had a whole shir about this in Perek Gimel, when we spoke about das, about meditation, and what the meditation entails and involves, right? Remember that class? So I don't want to repeat it again. You can watch it. Perek Gimel, chapter 3. It's probably this. There are probably two classes. It's the second class, and if you still have any questions afterwards, you come back. Okay. Ishapcha means that I work on myself to the point that I don't have any more desire for this food. So now I'll eat it. Why am I going to eat it? Because now I can eat it l'shem shamayim. That's ishapcha. I'm not suppressing any desire. I've transformed the desire. Or Eskafia could be, I don't like this other guy, but because I have obviously Yisrael, I'll do him a favor anyways. That's Eskafia. Ishapcha means working on myself to the point that I actually develop a love for him, right? And again, the primary place we're going to be discussing Eskafia versus Ishapcha is going to be later on in Tanya. But over here, in this Perek, the Alter Rebbe is going to talk about a much more subtle level of Eskafia and Ishapcha. In other words, both of the levels of Eskafia and Ishapcha that the Alter Rebbe is going to discuss in this Perek, both of them are subsets of what we traditionally view as Ishapcha. They're both Ishapcha, but within Ishapcha there's a Eskafia style and there's a Ishapcha style.
The Eskafia was the first time when Hashem gave us the Torah. Kafa aleim hakagigit. The Eskafia.
That's just a word association. There's no connection in terms of the idea. Well, there's a word, yes, that word is used over there, but that's not related to the concept that we're talking about over here. Because let's talk about transformation. So let's say I'm on a diet. Let's say I love chocolate, and I'm on a diet. So every time I see a bar, no more chocolate for me. So every time I see a bar of chocolate, I have this struggle, but I win the struggle. I don't eat the chocolate. So that would be Eskafia, right? What happens if a person goes to a doctor, and the doctor says that for you should know chocolate is poison. Next time you touch a bar of chocolate, you're going to die. So when that person looks at a bar of chocolate, does he have any struggles? What? No, there's no struggles. In fact, he's going to look at it and he'll get that away from me. It's poison. It's terrible. I hate it. It's awful. So that's his hapcha with him, right? Because his feelings have been transformed. But have his feelings really been transformed? Does he really not like chocolate anymore?
No, he still likes it.
He still likes chocolate. Still likes chocolate. So we have over here, his liking for chocolate has been suppressed so strongly to the point that he doesn't even feel it. But it's still there. It's still there. The ultimate ishapcha is when he doesn't like chocolate anymore. So you see there are three levels. One level is where the desire is very present and you suppress it. That's the classical iskafia. And the next level is where the feeling is so suppressed to the point that it isn't even visible. It isn't anymore, you don't see it, but it's there. It's suppressed. The ultimate ishapcha is when the person taki becomes transformed to the point. So let's talk about this in terms of avas Hashem. You can have one person who has avas Hashem, but it's not so powerful. It's not to the point where he doesn't feel any more desire for this world. However, his love for Hashem is strong enough to make sure that he doesn't indulge in anything in this world that he's not supposed to. But those desires that for the things that he's not supposed to have are still there and they're still felt. So that is classical iskafia. I have my desires, but I use my love for Hashem to overpower them. When a person's heart, however, is absolutely filled with a burning love for Hashem, as described over here, the words that the Rabbi uses is a ahava kirish peyesh, a love which is like fire. Hashem. So as the Chayvus Alavava says, that just like you can't have fire and water in the same cup, in the same keli, so Avas Hashem and Yiras Hashem can't occupy the same heart. When the heart is filled with Avas Hashem, there is no place for Avas Tanugi Elam Haza, for the love for anything in this world. So any feelings which are contrary to Hashem are automatically suppressed. But at the end of the day, the Nefesh Bahamis is being suppressed over here. It's not expressing itself. Because this person's love for Hashem is so intense and so great that there's no place to feel anything else at this moment. But that doesn't mean that the Nefesh Bahamis isn't the Nefesh Bahamis. It remains. And deep down, if you ask it, what does it want? It still wants Tanug Elam Haza. The problem is that it's being overwhelmed over here. The example that the Rebbe is going to use in the next Perek is the example of Bittul B'Shishim. That if you take a drop of milk, you're not allowed to do it, but if a drop of milk falls into a chicken soup which is 60 times its size, it becomes nullified, it's overwhelmed. So there can be a situation where the Nefesh Alikis overwhelms the Nefesh Bahamis to the point that the Nefesh Bahamis doesn't express itself anymore because it can't. The Nefesh Alikis is too powerful.
It's not displaced.
But it's still iskafia. It's still being suppressed. It wasn't displaced.
However,
there is something else. However, there is the possibility for the Nefesh Bahamis not to be suppressed, not to be overwhelmed, but for it to be transformed. So what does Chazal say on this? What does Rashi say on it? We can get the Nefesh Bahamis not to suppress it, but that the Nefesh Bahamis itself should love Hashem. And that's the ultimate goal. The The ultimate goal is not the iskafia, even though iskafia is we're talking here about the higher level of iskafia, where the nefesh habahamis is so suppressed. Can you imagine yourself in that place? We're going to find out the next perik that there are two levels of tzaddik. The lower level of tzaddik she'eni gomer, is the one who suppresses his nefesh habahamis to the point that it's out of commission. It's not even it's not there. In other words, you can't find it with a microscope. It's batul b'shishim. But the tzaddik gomer, the greatest level of tzaddik, is the one who doesn't suppress his nefesh habahamis, doesn't overwhelm it, but transforms it. The nefesh habahamis itself.
But then he's a malach.
Then he's a malach.
So you have to stay up there. You don't have to come down here.
Okay. The Alter Rebbe actually says in this parak and next parak that the experience of a tzaddik is a lam chatir b'chayach. It's me'in elam haba. It's like nisina schar. And it comes after a lot of avodah. It's not sorry, what?
Not but matana.
It is a matana because not everyone can achieve it through avodah. In other words, some people will do all the avodah they won't get there. But those certain people have special neshamas, and they have the potential to be a tzaddik, but that comes through a lot of work. And we have, listen, it says also in the Gemara, it says about Avram, Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. David HaMelech said, Libi Chalal Bekirbi, Shehargi B'tainis, that he had no Yitzhak Hara also, right? So, as is the Mitzvah, that it's a very unique, select group of people that is actually transformed the Nefesh HaBahamis. How is it possible to transform the Nefesh HaBahamis? Yeah.
What does it mean to not have it? Like,
To have had what?
so going back to the chocolate, right? You're saying that you get to a point where, okay, the doctor says that it's poison, but you still like it, right? But what is the mindset of someone who doesn't even like it?
So that's where the analogy falls short, because what would make a person not like it?
But is it, so like, for example, I mean, I don't know, what is the, what
I think by the time we finish, your question will be answered. The Nefesh HaBahamis isn't intrinsically evil. The essence of the Nefesh HaBahamis is explained in Chassidus is what's called a koyach hamasava. It desires. What is a desire? It desires pleasure. The Yetzer Hara is different. The Yetzer Hara is what in the words Dal Rebbe later called the begadim hatzoyim. A lot of times the dirty clothing. The Nefesh HaBahamis has dirty clothing, which means the default nature of the Nefesh HaBahamis is that where does it search for pleasure and find pleasure in the physical and material world, because we're physical people. But it doesn't have to be that way. The Nefesh HaBahamis can be taught to enjoy a relationship with Hashem, to enjoy a mitzvah, to enjoy studying Torah. That's transformation. And when the Nefesh HaBahamis is transformed, it's extremely powerful. Because the Nefesh HaBahamis is more powerful than the Nefesh Elikis. We all know that. Think about our strongest passions and our strongest desires. They're not for studying Torah. Can you imagine if they're the passions of the Nefesh HaBahamis? Can you imagine a person who's able to harness the Nefesh HaBahamis, and that its desire is to study Torah, and its desire is to do mitzvahs? It's very, very powerful. And it's not, as we know, our Nefesh HaBahamis is not limited by seichel. In other words, we do things even though they don't make sense, because we want to do them. You know, our desire to do mitzvahs is much colder. Everything has to make sense, and everything has to be calculated. The Nefesh HaBahamis is much less calculated. It's much more powerful. It's a behemoth. But can we put a yoke, a harness on this animal and direct it in the right direction, put it in the right direction? And when we do that, when a person accomplishes that, there's a pasuk, it says, "V'rav tevuos b'koyach sher," which means that you get a lot of wheat with the power of an ox. If a man decides he wants to go and plow the field, it'll take him a long time, it'll be very difficult. Stick the plow onto the ox, the field gets plowed very quickly, you get much more wheat that way. And also, spiritually speaking, if we can harness the inner ox and get it to love Hashem, so that's something which is very powerful. And that is the ultimate madrega of ishapcha, which is not only is my nefesh al bahamis suppressed, but actually the nefesh al bahamis now is also been channeled and is now in the service of Hashem.
And it has a time to do mitzvahs.
It has a taiva to do mitzvahs.
And the nefesh al doesn't have a taiva, so to speak.
It does, but it's not as powerful. To remember, the nefesh elokis is based in the mind.
I see.
Bahamis is based in the heart, and we all know which one is more powerful.
Physical desire.
In other words, yes, the mind can control the heart. So the mind is more powerful in that sense. But we're talking about in terms of intensity and passion. There is no doubt that the heart is the mind is no. Yes.
I was going to ask. It says that the Torah, learning Torah is the highest pleasure there is. So why is it inconceivable that instead of the Nefesh Bahamis getting pleasure from drinking too much, it should get the higher pleasure and hook on to learning Torah? Why
It's inconceivable that the Nefesh Bahamis, it's inconceivable for the average person that should be the entire and only pleasure of the person to the exclusion of all else. That is the Madriga of Tzaddik. However, what you're saying is absolutely correct. And we're going to talk about that whether later today or whether next week we're going to get there also. In other words, at the end of the day, even when we're talking about the highest levels, we have to find some sort of application to ourselves also.
Because I would say the Nefesh Bahamis would say, wait a minute, learning Torah is the higher pleasure. I'm out for pleasure. Let me get that one. Who needs this low one?
There was a mashpia on Lubavitch. His name was Reb Greinim. And he used to say that if all the Bali Taiva of the world would know the taiva that there isn't davening, they would drop all their taivas and they would come and daven. That's what he would say. What? The what?
The extra taiva, the tiny from Torah.
Yeah. The Rambam also speaks that way a little. Yeah. But here we're talking about total transformation to the point that everything else that becomes absolutely no desire for that. Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking about what you said, that if the taiva is for pleasure, then that's the nefesh bahamis by definition. You haven't grown. You've just changed your pleasure. It may be spiritual pleasure, but you haven't grown. You haven't transformed yourself. You've just changed the focus of pleasure.
If you can define that as not
greater, but you haven't switched over to the nefesh elokis, the high.
You've transformed the nefesh bahamis that at this moment it is completely in line with all the desires of the nefesh elokis. That's what we're saying here. The question is how is this accomplished? How is this? Again, the nefesh. We're talking about the desire of the nefesh elokis. So we started off saying again, it all starts in the head. It wants that the head should be filled with the chabad of the nefesh elokis, and then that moves on to the midos, the emotions, the love, and says have a fiery love, and then this love should then spread forth and also should transform the nefesh bahamis. But as Alter Rebbe is going to explain in a moment, the way the nefesh bahamis is transformed is not through a love, which is a fiery love, ava krish peyesh, but rather there's a higher level of love. And when the nefesh elokis is able to have this level of love, then it's able to transform the nefesh bahamis. And this higher level of love is referred to in Shir HaShirim as ahava b'tanugim, a pleasureful love, and it's also known as ahava kamayim. Contrast that with ava krish peyesh, a fiery love. It's actually a love which is characterized by water, which is very calm and very peaceful and tranquil and coldish, so to say. And it would seem love is more characterized by fire. What does it mean, al-ava kamayim, a love which is like water? And the answer to that is that there really are two kinds of loves that express when fire. Let's talk about a fiery love, or let's talk about fire. Fire is constantly trying to rip itself away from its wick and it's trying to ascend upwards. There's something that it's trying to attain. It has a certain goal. It's trying to connect to something, and it hasn't. So it has this fiery desire to connect to above, but it's leashed down here. The nature of fire and a fiery love is when you are distant from something, and you want to get it, you want to connect to it. That's where there's a fiery love. Once you've actually connected and once you're experiencing that which you wanted, then the love isn't a fiery love anymore. Then you have a ava betanugim. It's a relaxed and pleasureful love, as opposed to a love which is characterized by tzimoin, by thirst, and by desire, and by yearning. So in terms of our love of Hashem, there's one person whose love for Hashem is characterized by fire, by yearning for Hashem, by an intense desire to connect to Hashem. And then there's the person who actually experiences Hashem, actually experiences that relationship, at which point the fire is put out and it's replaced by an intense amount of pleasure, enjoyment of the relationship with Hashem. You know, in Chabad, so in Chabad, the Hasidim always were never impressed by what's called in Chabad hispilus. It's hard to translate that word into English, hispilus, but it means hispilus is a huge amount of excitement, but noticeable excitement, and when a person is all riled up. And in Chabad, it was always more admired the people who are calm, relaxed, where you don't see anything. You don't see anything on them. And a mashal that was given, although by the way, interesting, the Alter Rebbe was full of hispilus. Alter Rebbe, when to a crazy degree, when the Alter Rebbe would say mamarim, he would be doing somersaults, literally, from hispilus, in fact, the best mamarim that we have, there's another transcribed from the Alter Rebbe, were called the Hanachas, those that were written by a chassid whose name was Reb Pinchas of Shklav, and he would actually do somersaults together with the Alter Rebbe to be able to hear every single word the Alter Rebbe was saying. Can you imagine that scene? The Pinchas of Shklav. There's a sefer, Mamari Admur Azakin, you have it probably over here. It's called Hanachas Harab.
Transfer it.
There you go. Mamari Admur Azakin, Hanachas Harab. These are written by the Pinchas Shklaver, and they're supposed to be very meduyik, very accurate, because he would follow the Alter Rebbe, and and when they had to, when he davened, they had to pad the walls next to him, because he would be banging the walls when he davened. And his son, the Mittler Rebbe, this is the second Lubavitcher Rebbe, or actually the first Lubavitcher Rebbe. The Alter Rebbe, that's one of the things. The Alter Rebbe really wasn't a Lubavitcher Rebbe, because the movement moved to Lubavitch in the times of his son. Alter Rebbe lived in Liadi or Liyashna. Alter Rebbe was Chabad, although colloquially he's called Lubavitch, but he wasn't really Lubavitch. Sorry?
So he was really the Liader Rebbe.
Liadi or Liyashna, right?
Yeah.
He started Chassidus Chabad, which, so the Mittler Rebbe was the exact opposite. The Mittler Rebbe, he would daven for hours and he wouldn't move a limb.
Totally composed.
And when he was davening, but completely, and the shamish would often pick up his chair and turn it around so Chassidim could see with him when he's davening, and he had no clue whatsoever. And then before he finished davening, he'd put the chair back in its right place.
How come the first time the Baal Tanya using a lot of sentences from Shir Ashir?
If you look the Alter Rebbe's Mamarim, and look at the Torah, so you have Reish Shmais Vayikra B'Midbar Dvarim, Shir HaShirim, huge. I was very into Shir HaShirim. Shir HaShirim is the love story between the Yidden and Hashem. So the Mittler Rebbe, he would be davening, sweat would be pouring down his face, and the tip of his shtreimel was wet with sweat, but you couldn't see a move on him. And that more set the standard by Lubavitch. And the mashal is given, the example is given. You have a person, you have a wealthy person, who one day he invites a poor person who hasn't eaten in 2 days to come and join him for his meal. So the person comes, and the first course is served. So the wealthy person, he's relaxed, he waits a few moments, then he takes his napkin and adjusts it very nicely, and takes his fork and takes his knife, and he's cutting his food. And by the time he starts eating, the poor person has already finished his entire plate. No napkins, no forks on it. He's throwing everything in and making noises and sounds. And, oh my gosh, it's amazing and it's great. And he's all excited and he's spineless. And then the second course comes, the third course. And the person who's standing on the side, who's more excited about the food? Who's more connected to this food? The rich person or the poor person? It would seem the poor person. Just the behavior. He's acting so excited. But the next day, if you were to tell the rich person, okay, today you're not having that. Today you're having only bread and water. And you tell it to the poor person, who would be more upset?
Rich person.
Why isn't the rich person showing excitement? Because he has it. You're not excited when you have something. Excitement and all those signs shows that you're searching for something. And over here we're talking about there's the tzaddik, the lower level of Ava Krish B'yesh, which by the way is an amazing level of Ava, and we should all reach there. But is the person who still is looking and looking and looking. And that is an Ava which is characterized again by thirst. Now the Nefesh HaBahamis isn't interested in thirst. Think about that for a second. Nefesh HaBahamis, thirst isn't attractive to the Nefesh HaBahamis. So therefore, this Ava, Krish B'yesh, this fiery love, the most it can do to the Nefesh HaBahamis is overwhelm it and put it in hibernation. It doesn't talk to it. But the higher level of Ava, which is Ava B'tanugim, the pleasureful love, the person who takes pleasure and delight in Hashem, in his experience of Hashem, and his relationship with Hashem, that has the ability to transform the Nefesh HaBahamis, because that is the language of the Nefesh HaBahamis. Ava B'tanugim means a love which is pleasureful. Pleasure is the language of the Nefesh HaBahamis. And when the Nefesh Elikis experiences such intense pleasure in its relationship with Hashem, the Nefesh HaBahamis, its only reaction is, me too. I want that also. But my silliness is the other pleasures I've been doing. I'm looking at what you're enjoying. So therefore, Iskafia of the Nefesh HaBahamis, that is through Ava Krish B'yesh. Ava Krish B'yesh, that incredible fiery love that a person has for Hashem, that thirst for Hashem, because it's so overwhelming, that does Iskafia of the Nefesh HaBahamis. It puts the Nefesh HaBahamis out of commission. Hapcha, the transformation of the Nefesh HaBahamis, that comes to the higher level, which is the level of Ava B'tanugim, when a person takes pleasure in Hashem. Yes?
Must the person go through Ahava Be'esh to reach the level of Ahava B'tanugim?
Yes.
He has to go through,
Yeah.
He can't just jump up there.
Yeah.
Let's connect first.
You have to reach for something and desire it, and then find, and then you get it. And we'll continue Mitzvah Hashem next week in this Perek, but even though we're talking about levels again, which are very high levels, but I think I once mentioned, and I'm going to mention it I'm sure many more times before we finish, as we continue. Every one of us over here, in the Perek Aleph of Tanya, we talked about that there are 5 levels. There's Rasha V'Ralei, and Rasha V'Toivlei, and a Beinini, and a Tzadik V'Ralei, and a Tzadik V'Toivlei. And the immature person understands this as being only 5 different people, when in fact, all 5 people are us. Every single one of us is a Rasha V'Ralei, Every single one of us is a Rasha v'Tovlei. Every single one of us is a Beinini, a Tzaddik v'Tovlei, and a Tzaddik v'Ralei. And as we go through the different designations of what that means, we're going to see how really we can relate to even the very, very worst Rasha, the Rasha v'Ralei, which, as we're going to learn in Perik Yud Aleph, is someone who never regrets a thing that they do. They do Aveirus and they don't regret. Is there an area in our lives where we do things wrong and we don't have regret? No, there's no such thing in your life.
You do something wrong, you gotta regret it.
You're talking about the big things. I'm talking about the small things which you don't even notice. You're so used to doing them. Okay? And is there an area in your life where you have Ava B'Tanugim?
Don't even help me, I got next door.
Is there an area in your life where you have Ava B'Tanugim?
No.
No?
How could it be?
Is there an area in your life where your relationship with Hashem in that area, and that mitzvah, or that area, is actually characterized by pleasure?
Shabbos.
That's your area, okay? And we have to realize the more that we can increase that areas of tainug in our life, this ava b'tanugim, is it the purest level of ava b'tanugim as as taka as the great tzaddik experiences it? No, but everyone on their own level. Everyone on their own level. The way to transform, when we say v'haftas Hashem Elokecha b'chol levavcha b'shnei yitzracha, it's talking to every one of us. As we're going to learn later in Tanya, we're all charged with the job of trying to transform our desires into desires of holiness. Will we completely succeed? Probably not. For that you have to be a tzaddik. But we have to try, and we do make little progress here and there. And the lesson over here is that thirsting for Hashem, as beautiful as that may be, and as holy as that may be, that is not going to affect the transformation of the Nefesh HaBahamis. What's going to affect the transformation of the Nefesh HaBahamis is the moments that I can actually find pleasure in Hashem. How do we find pleasure in Hashem? I think we'll talk about that next week.